Ahoy! So the springtime event is out, and while I have already made a basic guide for it, which I'll link right here if you're just interested in the basics, I want to talk a bit about how you can do this event as quickly and efficiently as possible, in my opinion. I've just been doing this casually on the side between other activities, and in total I've probably not farmed more than 3 hours, and I have all the rewards from the event, so now I'm farming some doubles and some sellables. As an added bonus, it's also a pretty nice way to farm activity cards. You want to make sure to stock up on 2 things before you head out. On one hand, you want to have Springtide Wafers, which will give you the doubled Wispy Bloom reward. These can be bought in the event village. You're gonna have to have some resources to do so though. You can also get them by farming a few of the gift piles that are in every town, which have a chance to drop them. Likewise, you also need Wispy Spritz, and I'd recommend getting as many as possible so you don't have to worry about rationing them. These can be farmed from the gift piles as well, or you can craft them. This is done with fibers, honey, and fire modes. Unfortunately, honey is very expensive now, but if you're supporting me on Patreon, then you get early trading tips, and one of these tips that I gave out long before this event was to stock up on these resources, so when the event happens you would already have these resources and maybe even make some money off them. So if you don't want to be left empty-handed next time, you know what to do. Now, what you need to find first is a suitable location. If you go on EternalMap.gg, I will link that down below as well, you can find the event's Wispy Bloom locations here, so you can see all of them on the map. There are quite a few different ones that you can go to. There's an area here in Windswood towards Monarch's Bluffs, for example, that has quite a few. You can go down to Cutlass, you can go down here. There are really a lot of places, as you can see, that have a decent concentration in terms of the area. And the place that I like to go, that I would not necessarily recommend for everyone to go at the same time because then it's not efficient, would be up here in Weaver's Fen. Now, these places obviously are all kind of reliant on not too many people being there at the same time. So while some places may seem more efficient than others, the most efficient place is the place where no one else is. So as long as there's just a few flowers that are in a circle around that you can kind of loop around, that is enough. You don't need all too many flowers. 5, 6, 7-ish flowers should be fine. Any more than that just seems unnecessary because the first one will respawn by the time you're done. So when it comes to farming the flowers, there are a few interesting things and tricks I'd like to note. Before we get into the ways that you can most efficiently do this alone, let's talk about the worst case scenario, which is other people are around. You won't always be alone in the area, and when you're not, you can obviously just play along with whoever is doing the flower, but I found that usually that makes things worse. If multiple people that don't have any group coordination going on do this together, then they will probably end up just dragging the wasps away from each other, not always rolling to the same flower, and it makes things take longer and you're going to use more resources. So as long as everyone is fine using 3 Wispy Spritz to blow up the wasps, the better way is to let another person do it, stay far at the edge of the event area, and place a single bomb. And at this point I quickly want to thank Miguel, who showed me many of the tips that are in this video, and this was one of the things that he showed me. So as long as you placed a bomb, you will get credit for the flowers, and when the flower is collected by someone else, you will still get the reward from that. This method is unfortunately not entirely without downsides, because it means you won't get a tag on the wasps, which I think means they are not contributing towards your activity cards, and they are also likely not going to give you any wasp goo, which is actually the best resource from the event. But you can counteract that by inviting that person to a party. As long as they have hit the wasps with a bomb at some point, the party tag will be enough to get the goo as well, and get the credit for the mob kills. The bombing for credit even works after someone else has already collected the big flower, so if you come in last second, just bomb something real quick and you will still get credit. But now let's talk about more ideal scenarios where you're either alone or with someone that you have good coordination with. So the first thing you absolutely want to do is use your Springtide Wafer. Again, this is what doubles your rewards and reduces the time to farm significantly. When farming alone and seeing a flower, I would recommend just walking up to it once so all the bees are definitely aggro on you. If you have Carnelian, you can also use taunts, but you definitely want to make sure that all of the wasps are aggroed on you at the same time. Then I would roll to one of the outer flowers and detonate that so that the wasps have to move all the way over there, away from the central flower. And I wouldn't want to get close to the central flower until the wasps are dead, because otherwise they will always move back there and then back to where you're standing, which can lead to you losing bombs. Then you just kind of circle around the outer edges, or like move a little bit towards the inside but not close enough to the flower, and you detonate twice again and you're done. This is the most simple and straightforward method. But of course, there is more to it. There are quite a few areas where two flowers are close together. This can be used to your advantage if you want to be quick. It comes with a downside though. So what you can do is you can simply group all of these 3 wasps, ideally a little bit away from the flower, and then run up to the flower. And if you are close enough to the next flower, then the wasps will all aggro over to the next flower at the same time. This now gives you time to loot the first flower, and unless you're unlucky and one of the wasps from the other side is coming over, you should be able to loot this before the wasps return, so you kind of skip the whole bombing process. Other people can still get credit the same way by just bombing one of the plants. They will still get the tag as usual. The downside with this method, and why we don't always use it anymore, is that you don't get a tag on the wasps themselves, meaning they don't drop goo like this. It is possible that maybe if you hit them with 1 bomb first, you could pull this off and they might still drop goo, but I'm not sure about that. There's another, in my opinion, preferable method, which won't always work, but it'll at least give you wasp goo credit every single time. That method is double bombing. If you walk up to a field and you look very closely, it depends on the daytime, sometimes it's hard to see, but generally you will see some of the flowers glowing much brighter than others. This can be misleading from a distance and sometimes it's hard to tell. Sometimes you will probably see one glowing brighter, but it's not actually glowing brighter. But either way, you will usually find at least a few that are glowing brighter, and this is because they are double stacked flowers. That means under the initial flower is another flower. It is possible to utilize this with a single person, but it's especially effective with 2 people. You pull out the wasps as usual to a single flower, detonate that one because you need 3 hits anyways and there are no triple flowers, and then both you and your teammate pull over to the next flower and both detonate it at the same time so that you get a double hit on the wasps immediately. This makes the farm extremely quick. On top of all this, the wasp farm has an additional benefit. Ideally, you want to do it in an area that doesn't have angry earth mobs, because the wispy wasps count as angry earth mobs. And this is something you can utilize with your activity cards on your season pass. And this is important because the wispy farm allows you to farm activity cards extremely quickly. So the first things that you can do are obviously the activities directly related to wispy wasps, which are much quicker compared to the corrupted rabbits, but no surprise there. So there are a few ones like placing bombs and also just killing the wasps, so easy enough. Along with that, there is an activity to craft Wispy Spritz, but that's not particularly useful because that would mean we would have to go back to town, which is not what we want to do. However, there is also obviously the activity to kill angry earth mobs, and there are also various activities that require you to use a weapon to kill mobs. So, for example, one-handed melee weapons, magical weapon, or bow. Just holding one of these weapons in your hand while you're using bombs counts as kill credit for mobs. So if I'm holding my bow, I get kill credit for bow kills with the whole bombing thing. And then obviously, if you're in an area that doesn't have angry earth mobs, but some kind of other mob, you will have to kill a few along the way anyways, so you get credit for those as well. What this means is that it is extremely rare to not at least get 2 activities done on an activity card when farming the wispy wasps. And if you're doing that, you can just flip the card. You can just re-roll the card, and the first re-roll is always free, no Azoth cost tied to that one, and you should usually have at least a 3rd activity here to fulfill the 3rd stamp condition. Now I know some of you are completionists and like filling out their cards, and generally I definitely agree with that. It feels a lot better, but in this particular situation it makes a lot more sense to flip cards quickly, because you can get many cards done while you're farming just a few wasps. If you don't reroll your cards, you're basically ending up wasting free progress. So you just want to make sure to clear out the activities that you're immediately able to, and then always flip to the next activities and then flip to the next card. And this should give you some pretty decent progress while also allowing you to farm the resources for this event. Now, I've talked about the value of the legendary patterns in my previous video of this event, so you can check that out. That will be linked at the end of this video. But I also wanted to mention that these patterns are actually going for reasonable money at the moment. So if you're looking to make some gold with the event, these patterns are very easy and quick to farm. You only need 1 of the legendary tokens, so literally just 1 wasp goo, or just farming a few flowers here and there. So it's really not bad to farm, and if you are looking to make easy gold, then that's a good way. And likewise, if you like the patterns, you can just farm them easily that way. We know that they have a tendency to give old patterns more of a purpose in the future, so I think it's definitely worth stocking up on them a little bit. In the next days, we have some interesting info I haven't talked about yet, as well as the mutation guide, and also we need to talk more about shuriken fortification alea version. I know some of you are still fairly confused about that, so I will go into more detail about that. So if you haven't yet, consider subscribing and clicking the bell, And if you want to get early trading tips, as I said, that's what my Patreon is for. Thanks to all my patrons, and thank you for watching. Geek Sloth, out.